Hi, I'm Elise and welcome to Witch Way. Today I'll be reviewing the witch lore in Season 1 of Chilling Adventures of Sabrina. Part 1 was released October 2018 and stars Kiernan Shipka as Sabrina Spellman, Lucy Davis as Hilda, Miranda Otto as Zelda, and Chance Perdomo as Ambrose, rounding out the Spellman family. We also have Ross Lynch as Harvey Kinkle, Jazz Sinclair as Rosalind Walker, and Lachlan Watson as Susie Putnam, as well as Michelle Gomez as Mary Wardwell, Richard Coyle as Father Faustus Blackwood, and Tati Gabrielle as Prudence Knight. This series takes place in the fictional town of Greendale and follows Sabrina, half mortal, half witch, and the decision she has to make following her 16th birthday, signing the Book of the Beast and unlocking her powers, or foregoing doing so and living out a mortal life. Weighing up each choice is complicated by both witch and mortal problems, and the devil wants his due. This series is written by Roberto Guerra-Sacasa. As an adaptation of his comics of the same name, you can see some of the original artwork in the opening sequence. These comics themselves being inspired by the Archie comics, Sabrina the Teenage Witch. They are a much darker take on Sabrina, but still campy and fun to watch, and has a lot of old classic horror inspiration behind it. But what else inspired these witches? This series takes the stereotypical trope of witches worshipping the devil and really makes it its own. The Greendale Coven are all members of the Church of Night, a mockery of the Christian Church. They have a satanic Bible, priests, 13 commandments, pray to the Dark Lord, and even have a dark baptism where they sign the Book of the Beast. This book is inspired by the belief that witches had to make a pact with the devil and would sign his book, making their mark with pen and ink or blood. Interrogators in the Salem witch trials tried to get witches to confess to signing the book, as then they would also be able to name other witches who had also done so. Salem is also Sabrina's familiar's namesake. It explains why in the comics, but a familiar was believed to be a lesser devil or imp who would change into the form of an animal to assist their witch. Mary Wardwell's familiar is named Stolas after the demon of the same name, and Zelda's familiar?
Vinegar Tom would happily welcome another dog.
I also played a familiar called Vinegar Tom in a playthrough of the RPG The Witch is Dead for the Distant Grey Gaming podcast. Find that and my review of the game in the links. According to information given in 1645 by self-proclaimed Witchfinder General Matthew Hopkins, accused witch Elizabeth Clark had a familiar named Vinegar Tom, a sure sign she was a witch. Another method favoured by this witchfinder?
The accused will submit to being stripped and examined in full view of the coven for a witch's mark upon her body.
Apparently every witch had a witch's mark, a sign that she made a pact with the devil, and her familiar would feed from this spot, though when it was pricked it would not produce blood. Another way of finding out witches?
We may subject Sabrina to trial by water. She will be bound and dropped into the river. If she floats, she's a witch. If she drowns, she's human and free to go.
Trial by water was indeed carried out. An accused witch was bound and thrown into the water, the idea being that water was pure and would reject anything unholy. Unfortunately, that meant if they were innocent, they would still die in the process, but this was seen to be a good and pure death. Many of these witch hunts were encouraged by one verse in particular from the King James Bible.
Thou shalt not suffer a witch to live.
King James also wrote Demonology, where he talks extensively about witches and their abilities, such as that of being able to raise a storm. This book was believed to be the inspiration behind the witches from Shakespeare's Macbeth, known as the Weird Sisters. This also happens to be the nickname for the orphans Dorcas, Prudence, and Agatha. Sabrina even uses lines of the play to summon them.
The Weird Sisters, hand in hand, travelers of the sea and land, thrice to thine and thrice to mine, and thrice again to make up 9. Peace, the charm's wound up.
When the Weird Sisters help Sabrina get some payback against some high school bullies, they throw in a little gift.
We took their boyhoods. Until you release the birds, those 4 boys won't be rising to any occasion. few weeks of impotence might teach them better manners.
It was believed witches could actually do this. In 1486, the Witch Hunter's Guide, the Malleus Maleficarum, has many chapters on the subject, such as how, as it were, they deprived men of their virile member. The Weird Sisters also get caught out at one point when Nick Scratch, which is also a nickname for the devil by the way, drives iron stakes through their footprints. This stems from a folklore belief that driving a nail into a witch's footprint would break their enchantments, as it would cause them pain, distracting them from their workings. As nails also have a binding element, these witches have been trapped in place. The person responsible for the care of the orphan Weird Sisters is Father Faustus Blackwood. His name is inspired by the German alchemist and magician Johann Faust, also known in English as John Faustus. In folklore, he was believed to have made a pact with the demon Mephistopheles, one of the many demons who are mentioned throughout the series.
Aunties, we have a big problem.
Mephistopheles, save us from the melodramatics of a teenage witch.
Sabrina attempts to exorcise on one of these demons and name drops a whole bunch of witches.
Barely a half.
I call forth the powers of Lilith,
The biblical Adam's first wife,
of Aradia,
the daughter of Diana and Lucifer,
of Morgan Le Fay.
sorceress from Arthurian legend,
I call on Black Anna.
a witch from English folklore with iron claws,
I call on Anne Boleyn.
wife of King Henry VIII, believed to have been a witch,
I call on the Witch of Endor.
from the Hebrew Bible, who used necromancy to communicate with the spirits,
Call on Hecate,
goddess of witches, among many other domains,
on Artemis,
Greek goddess of the hunt, also another name for Diana,
on Luna, to expel this demon.
the Roman goddess who embodied the moon,
Visit us, sisters, intercede on our behalf. I call Hildegard of Bingen.
writer and mystic from the early 2nd century,
I call Marie Laveau.
voodoo queen of New Orleans who lived most of the 19th century,
I call Tippetbach.
first person to be accused of witchcraft in the Salem witch trials,
Mary Bradbury.
also accused of witchcraft in the Salem witch trials,
I call Nemet. Matcha.
sisters from Irish mythology known as the Morrigan,
I call Circe.
sorceress from Greek mythology,
I call Mal Dyer.
who according to legend was accused of witchcraft and was later found partially turned into stone.
I call on Juventus the Virgin. On Juno.
Both Roman goddesses,
I call upon Cybele.
author and self-described witch,
Come forth, kindly ones.
refers to the Furies of Greek mythology,
Come forth, Mother of Darkness.
who I like to think is referring to Mater Tenebrarum from the Three Mothers horror trilogy. In the Christmas special, we also get introduced to Gryla.
Who's Gryla?
A very dangerous witch. During a famine, she and another woman from her coven made a pact. They would eat their own children to survive.
Seriously, what is it with witches and cannibalism?
She is from Icelandic folklore and didn't have a problem with chowing down on disobedient children, though not her own. Her own 13 children were indeed known as the Yule Lads.
Come along, laddies. Back to the mountains.
In folklore, she wasn't initially portrayed as a witch, but a giantess. Later in this same episode, we also hear the mention of Witch Epiphany.
Oh, and now all we have to do is get through Witch Epiphany in one piece without some other terror rising from the bowels of hell.
Epiphany is celebrated shortly after Christmas, and in Italian folklore, the witch La Befana comes to visit at this time. Alongside witches, we had cunning folk who, opposed to witches who used black magic, used white magic instead. Roz's family was apparently cursed by witches, and that's how they gained their cunning. So it appears some of these abilities can be imbued, but most of the witches in this series have innate magic and use spells and components to increase their magical abilities. This cute, campy horror series gets full marks for lore, history, and the craft. Make sure you follow me on Instagram or Facebook for some extra content, and I will be reviewing the comics and the further 3 seasons of Chilling Adventures of Sabrina. So make sure you like and subscribe to keep up to date, and thanks for watching here on The Witch Way.
Praise Satan.